This happened last year, right before I switched up jobs in October. I used to work really early in the morning. I would catch a transit bus at 4:30, get to my intersection, and hopefully catch a connecting bus. I didn't like walking in this neighborhood for 2 reasons. 1, I was almost hit by a drunk driver while walking to work, and 2, I have a lot of body pain that made walking distances difficult. My bus was running late, so sadly I did miss my connection and was forced to walk. So I began my 15-minute walk to my job in the dark of the morning. Now, the neighborhood is strange. One of those where you simply cross the street and you are in either the good or bad side of the neighborhood. I was in what was the newer, good side of this area. To add into this, the area is barely lit with hardly any street lights. So it was an anxiety-inducing walk. As I am walking, I see headlights down one of the darkened streets. Catches my attention and I glance down it for a split second, and then I focus back on the path ahead of me. Suddenly, the car is peeling out of that street and does a sharp turn to pull up right next to me. In the car were 3 to 4 guys. I want to say they were early to mid-20s. It was hard to tell, but I immediately went on high alert. When they got up beside me, they started screaming at me about how they were going to kill me and a bunch of other shit before they eventually made a U-turn on the road and peeled off in the opposite direction. My heart was racing. I was shaking. It was the second time something bad happened in that neighborhood that put me off that I couldn't wait to get a new job away from the area. While their threats were empty, and probably just a bunch of dudes being jackasses, it didn't take away the fact that for a split second I was afraid they were going to mow me down with their car or jump out and beat the shit out of me. It only added fuel to the growing PTSD fire of almost getting rammed by a drunk driver. Luckily, I got a new job within a month of the incident, but I am still nervous around traffic. And every time a car speeds by me while I am walking on the sidewalk, I feel my heart racing because I think of that time and the drunk driver. It was almost dark as I began making my way back to my campsite after an enjoyable afternoon of hiking. After traveling only a short distance, I was surprised to see a small child sitting in the middle of the trail. She appeared to be about 7 or 8 years old, and as I got closer, I could see that she'd been crying. I asked her if she was lost, and she nodded her head. Thinking that she might have been out here for a while, I asked if she was hungry, and she nodded her head again. So I gave her a granola bar and a bottle of water. She devoured the food as if she hadn't eaten in days and drank every drop of water. When I offered to help her find her parents, she reached out her hand to me, and I took it, helping her to her feet. Since I had no idea where her parents' campsite was and doubted if she did, I decided the best thing to do was to take her to the ranger station. As we walked along the trail, she kept looking nervously towards the woods, as if she was afraid of something. The closer we got to the ranger station, the more hesitant she was, until she eventually just stopped walking and refused to budge. I asked her what's wrong, but she still didn't speak, just shaking her head no and standing in place. After a moment, she looked up at me with the saddest expression I've ever seen and unexpectedly hugged me tightly, then letting go and whispering, "Don't follow me." Before I could react, she ran off into the woods. In spite of what she said, there was no way I could let this child go off into the forest on her own. So I went after her. I soon found myself deep in a part of the woods I wasn't familiar with, but she seemed to know where she was going, so I kept following her. The further we went, the more sinister the woods appeared, but I was convinced that it was just my mind playing tricks on me. Eventually, the forest opened up into a clearing, and I briefly lost sight of the child. As I entered the clearing, I was met by the chilling sight of a group of strange people, or rather creatures, as they did not look human. They were pale and spindly, with long, narrow fingers that ended in vicious-looking claws. Upon seeing me, they smiled, revealing mouths full of shark-like teeth. After overcoming my initial terror, at least somewhat, I noticed the child standing at the back of the clearing. One of the creatures patted her on the head and said, "Well done, child. She then went back and sat on a dirty, tattered mattress. I knew I should run, but I couldn't bear the thought of leaving the child alone with them. The rational part of my mind told me that she's clearly been here a while and that I should go get help and then come back to rescue her. I had just convinced myself to do so when I realized that I couldn't move. The creatures were all staring at me with their sickly yellow eyes, and my muscles were all locked in place as they slowly moved towards me. I saw the girl silently mouth, "I'm sorry." Then there was only pain and darkness. Years ago, me and my girlfriend moved into a small one-bedroom bungalow near Sherwood Forest. We both were believers in the paranormal, but didn't think we were moving into a haunted house. We started to notice things about a month after we moved in. We had just gone to bed one night and was trying to get to sleep when we heard someone moving around in the living room. The flooring was really hollow and you could hear someone in there from anywhere in the bungalow, and then it sounded like someone had sat on the sofa. I asked her, "Did you hear that?" She said yes. I asked, "What did you hear?" And she replied, "Someone's walking around the living room and has sat on the sofa." We actually thought we were being burgled, so I found whatever makeshift weapon I could, I think it was a shoe, and kept out of the bedroom, across the hallway, and burst into the living room, flicking the lights on as I did. There was nobody in there. This happened night after night, and after bursting into the living room a few times, I didn't bother as there was nobody there. But this was just the beginning. We lived there for around 5.5 years in all, and some of the things that went on were really strange. I'd find the toothpaste in the kitchen when neither of us had put it there. She would take a bath and afterwards ask me what I wanted, as she'd heard me calling her from the other side of the bathroom door, although I'd never left the living room and hadn't heard a thing. I'd be sat watching TV in the living room and hear someone whisper in my ear, although I could never make out what it was saying. The activity seemed to be on a cycle. We'd have 3 to 4 weeks of peace and quiet, and then 3 to 4 weeks of activity. We had even seen whatever it was a few times too. One time my girlfriend was in the bath. She'd take 45 minutes to an hour in there, and I was in the living room. I really needed to go to the toilet and stood up doing the I Need a Wee dance. A completely black figure walked straight through the living room door right in front of me. It walked into the middle of the living room, leant forward as if to check me out, and then stepped back. When it stepped back, it dissolved. That's the closest description I can think of. I just stood there with my brain trying to compute what I just saw. I thought it had to be a shadow cast by car headlights or something in front of the large lamp that was on. I checked the street, no cars were there. It's a dead-end street. Went to the lamp, put my hand in front of it. Too much light and too big to cast a proper shadow. I spent a fair while trying to figure out a reasonable explanation for that. Another time I saw it, I had gotten up in the middle of the night to use the bathroom and didn't want to wake my girlfriend up, so kept the lights off. There was a street lamp that shone through our kitchen and into the hallway so I could see a bit. We had a built-in cupboard in the hallway, and I saw this big black thing blocking the light, so thought the door was open. I reached over for the light switch and the large black shadow took a step back. I'd just been stood toe-to-toe with this thing thinking it was a door. I turned the light back off and there was no shadow whatsoever. The light shone through the hallway as usual. There were lots of other things that happened over the 5.5 years we lived there, but those were the most memorable.